Hi, I'm Congresswoman Terri Sewell, and I'd like to welcome you all to a very special mental health edition of Terri Talk. Joining us today are two outstanding guests from right here in Alabama's 7th Congressional District. Both of these ladies are leading the charge to increase access to mental health services and reduce the stigma of mental illness for those in our community. I am so excited for them to share their experience, and I look forward to introducing them in just a moment. Since 1949, Americans have observed May as Mental Health Awareness Month, a time to dedicate awareness about the importance of mental health. It is estimated that 1 in 5 adults in the United States experiences a mental health condition of some kind. Mental health affects all of us. Our friends, our family, our neighbors, our children, our seniors, and of course, our veterans. But despite the prevalence of mental illness, many Americans are hesitant to ask for help, and others lack access to the kinds of services they need. In fact, it is estimated that only half of those with mental health conditions receive treatment. I believe that mental health is health, period, full stop. Your mental well-being is just as important as your physical well-being. At a time when so many Americans are struggling with their mental health, we in Congress must do more to provide them with the resources, the support, and the respect that they deserve. We must also take action to reduce the stigma. Asking for help should be seen as a strength, not a weakness. It is important to know that you are not alone. There are so many amazing mental health professionals out there who can help connect you to services or medication if you need it. While we in Congress have much work to do, thanks to the bipartisan efforts of Democrats as well as Republicans, we have made important progress, especially for those in mental health crisis. In 2020, with my support, Congress passed legislation designating 988 as the national hotline for suicide prevention, mental health, and substance abuse crisis. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health emergency, you can dial 988 to speak with a trained counselor who can provide assistance and connect you with the resources you need. The 988 hotline is free, confidential, and available 24/7, 365 days of the year. It is available to anyone who needs assistance, including the 1 in 4 veterans in our nation experiencing a mental health condition. Our veterans have made extraordinary sacrifices for the freedoms we hold dear. We owe it to them to ensure that they receive the best quality health care, mental and physical, after they return home. That's why the second half of today's discussion will focus on the mental health resources available to our veterans right here in Alabama. Though our efforts have been great, I know that there's still so much more that we must do to prioritize mental health. No one knows that better than our guests. We are thrilled to be joined by two hardworking, intelligent, and knowledgeable ladies who have made it their mission to improve our collective mental wellness right here in Alabama. One of our guests is Tyrinda Hall, who serves as Chief of Mental Health for the Central Alabama Veterans Healthcare Systems. She is an expert on the resources available to Alabama's veterans who are struggling with mental health. And I look forward to hearing from her in just a moment. But first, I'd like to welcome Dr. Nadia Richardson. Dr. Richardson is the founder and CEO of Black Women's Mental Health Institute in Birmingham, Alabama, a national nonprofit dedicated to supporting the mental well being of Black women and girls. A former UAB professor, Dr. Richardson is an accomplished academic, having received her master's and PhD from the University of Alabama. Motivated by her own mental health journey, she provides free counseling and other services to communities throughout the state of Alabama through her organization, and her reach is only growing by the year. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Nadia Richardson. Dr. Richardson, thank you so much for joining us. Could you begin by sharing with us your inspiration behind your pursuing this line of work?
Absolutely. And thank you for including me and inviting me to be a part of this conversation. The Black Women's Mental Health Institute was absolutely inspired from a number of things, some personal and some academic, since I am a professor and do work in the space of women's health equity. I completed some research some years ago about the experiences of Black female college students with mental health concerns in an effort to explore the ways that institutions of higher education can support those students as they matriculate through their education. What I found was a number of disparities, but also the stigma that absolutely impacts the Black community. And from there, I've been able to travel the country and have these conversations in the community as well as universities. But what I found was there was a need to foster research as well as community education in this area. And that led to me launching the Black Women's Mental Health Institute. And since then, we've been providing free counseling as well as clinician training and community health awareness programming. However, the personal aspect of this conversation, and this is one of the reasons why I appreciate you highlighting that 1 in 5 individuals manages a mental health concern, is my own experiences of living with rapid cycling, high functioning bipolar 2. And I think by me sharing that story, it kind of dispels the misinterpretations of what mental health looks like, right? A lot of times there's this idea that individuals who are managing mental health concerns are incapable about going about their lives. But when you think about it being 1 in 5, and let's also expand on that, 1 in 5 actually means 56 million individuals. So when we're talking about those high numbers, that means that you're interacting with individuals every single day who are managing mental health concerns. And some of them might be individuals like me who start organizations, have entrepreneurial aspirations, and are making great impacts in communities. So that's another way of dispelling stigma around this subject.
So, Dr. Richardson, thank you so much for your willingness to share your own personal journey and about your wonderful organization. What kind of mental health challenges are unique to Black women and girls?
Sure, absolutely. As we may already know, there are interconnected health disparities when it comes to Black women and girls. Our state of Alabama, of course, has received a lot of national attention for the high rates of maternal mortality. We've seen an uptick in youth suicide, including some Black young girls who were lost at the age of 8 and 9. We've seen a lack of access to care, a lack of medical professionals actually acknowledging and hearing Black women when they go in to receive treatment and really dismissing their pain and distress, which also leads to greater loss and greater chronic illnesses and conditions. We know all of these things. It's one of the reasons why our organization is especially excited about President Biden's administration creating an executive order that will increase research, governmental research in the space of women's health equity, because these things work in an interlocking way to keep Black women and girls really striving to live a healthy life.
Absolutely. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic wreaked havoc on our collective mental health, making it harder to stay connected with friends and loved ones. But to be clear, we as a country were already experiencing mental health crisis, especially our young people. In your view, what caused this crisis and how can we get ourselves out of it? I think that when the dust settles from COVID-19, the remnants of that that affected everyone, I think, was mental health. And so you're absolutely right. I supported President Biden and his executive order, and also have voted a number of times to increase funding for mental health in a variety of areas, but especially around health equity. So, can you talk a little bit about sort of the stigma around mental health and coming out of COVID-19, how it was exacerbated?
Sure. So I do want to highlight a couple of things. Mental health disparities existed long before COVID. And because COVID impacted everyone and threw the entire country into distress, when we came out of, seemingly came out of the pandemic, we realized that those who were already experiencing disparities were now launched into greater disparity. And there's a number of reasons why that happens. Again, it's the ongoing stigma, it's a lack of connection in regards to integrative care. It's a lack of really understanding that mental health is connected to holistic health, right? So when we're thinking about chronic conditions, those individuals often have a comorbidity that includes mental health. It's also a reason why there's such a high rate in regards to what the country is spending in mental health, because those who have chronic conditions and may not have access to care utilize hospitals at a much greater rate, right? So that increases the cost of care in our country. And based on research that just came out from Meharry College, the Global Health Institute, as well as the Deloitte Health Equity Institute, that recent study found that it was $477 billion that it's costing our country to provide care, right? But however, this can be impacted. We can address this by increasing access to care. That means increasing the number of licensed clinicians, increasing funding, increasing coverage that will encourage individuals to utilize services. So that's one of the things I often like individuals to think about. We can focus on stigma, but stigma is not as impactful as access to care.
Absolutely. And talking about access to care, oftentimes this is not diagnosed by healthcare professionals, but by people who are around us or our loved ones or our teachers. You know, for me, when I think about it now, I look back on my experience both in college and in law school, and perhaps would have benefited from having a healthcare professional talk to me about my mental health. But when I lost my mother 3.5 years ago, I went through a state of depression that I'd never thought I mean, the depths of which I just did not really recognize, because as a person who's always having to function at high levels, I just didn't allow myself to grieve the way I probably should have initially, and was very much benefited by talking to a professional, healthcare professional, mental health professional, but also to join a grieving group that allowed me to share my grief with others who were going through similar grief. And so I just want folks to know, I mean, people look at people's glory and they don't know people's story.
Sure.
And I think that I would have truly benefited from also talking to a mental health professional when I was in college. The transition from high school to going to college far away from home, um, being woefully unprepared to be at a Ivy League institution, even though I graduated top of my class at Selma High School, I could have really used an opportunity to talk to someone. But I think that it was a stigma attached to that. I didn't want people to think that somehow, because I was in need of help, that I was helpless. And you know, that I look back on that time in my life, and I'm just so happy that you have an organization that really will focus on not just Black women, but Black girls as well. As we are blooming into womanhood, we often go through trying experiences as well. And so I know you're brave to talk about your own mental health challenges. And I just wanted to let you know that I personally benefited from having my own therapist to talk to during my own grief. And frankly, there are times when I still call her. So
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you're sharing your own story. So, to go back to what you're saying about stigma, one of the powerful ways of overcoming stigma is storytelling, just like you said, kind of sharing my own story as well. And that can be done in a peer support setting. It's one of the reasons our organization offers mental health first aid and QPR suicide prevention training. you don't have to be a licensed mental health professional to encourage conversations like that in your community. You can just be equipped to have those conversations and support someone. And that is giving a listening ear, encouraging them to see a clinician, letting them know that it's okay to see a clinician. Those things, peer support and peer conversations. We also host a monthly support group for Black women. All of those women are may not be seeing a counselor, but they have a safe space where they can talk through their stresses. To go back to what you mentioned, I also think another way of destigmatizing mental health is to acknowledge that there is diagnosable mental health concerns, and then there's mental distress that comes from trauma, and that trauma may look like the loss of a loved one. And that's when we talk about it that way, it also humanizes the conversation. I also think, in regards to access to care, it's recognizing that not every place is going to have a mental health condition. And to speak to something that is very close to your heart, because you mentioned Selma, Selma and the Black Belt is absolutely one of those areas. We've been doing a lot of work there in partnership with the Black Belt Community Foundation. And there's a digital divide there. There's a lack of resources. There's a lack of counseling services on site. And so, really, in order to increase access, it's encouraging individuals to come there. It's encouraging individuals to support access to Wi-Fi so their residents can have access to virtual counseling sessions. It also highlights the fact that our state in general has a lot of disparities. And this is something that we're working to move the needle on, because Alabama consistently ranks 50th in the country for mental health care access. And it's for a lot of those.
Sometimes we're 49th, thank God, for Mississippi
Yeah.
sometimes.
Well,
But
here's
the
the thing.
reality,
Mississippi has bypassed us. So we really need to acknowledge, oh, yes, Mississippi has bypassed us now. We've ranked 50th for the past 2 years. So it was 48th and 49th before then. But I don't know. Mississippi has figured some things out. So we have some serious work to do.
we do. And I want to thank you for being in the space that you are. What advice would you give to someone who's sitting at home listening to us, who may be experiencing a mental health crisis? What would you suggest that they do?
I would absolutely suggest that they talk to someone. If they don't yet feel comfortable talking to a clinician, talk to a loved one. Talk to someone in your faith community, because we are in the Bible Belt and that's a regular interaction that individuals in our state have. Talk to your internal medicine doctor. Oftentimes we feel as though we have to go to a mental health clinician, but internal medicine doctors, maybe when you go in for a physical, can also encourage you to utilize services in a different way, and that can often make individuals more comfortable in doing so. I will also make the shameless plug, if you're in the state of Alabama or even beyond, because we do a lot of work around the country, is to reach out to the Black Women's Mental Health Institute. In our state, in Alabama, we offer free counseling to the entire state. But because we rank 50th, we do not deny anyone services. So you do not have to be Black, you do not have to be women, and you can also get connected to us for services that may be offered by a Spanish speaking clinician. So we are definitely looking to address that. And so, what I would tell individuals is, do not be ashamed. It's easier said than done, especially because the way our society is set up, we focus on hyper individualism, hyper productivity. It's really easy to stay busy and go about your day to day life and dismiss any emotional feelings that you might have that could be distracting your ability to focus in life. But it is natural and it is normal to experience periods of distress, of sadness, of anxiety. It is human. What is not human is to shove all of those feelings aside and continue to go about your life as though you're okay. It's okay to not be okay.
Absolutely. I like that. It's okay to not be okay. Can you tell us your website and a telephone number so that we can plug it across our screen?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. It's www.bwmhi.org. And our phone number is 205-440-2837.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richardson, for sharing not only your personal story, but actually starting this organization, taking, yeah, as I'd like to say, turning your pain into purpose,
Yes.
and sharing that with others. I can't tell you how important this is. This topic is not just during the month of mental health awareness, but 365 days out of the year. And so, if you're listening to the sound of our voices, please, if you need help, do seek out help. And it doesn't always have to start with a mental health professional. It can be a loved one, a friend, a fellow church member, but it's okay to not be okay. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I just again would like to thank you for the opportunity to do this research or to be a part of this. You can see my research mindedness, inviting me to be a part of this conversation. And I do want to highlight that in addition to providing services to the community, we also train clinicians on how to engage everyone, including those who are in historically marginalized and disenfranchised populations. That's something we realize oftentimes is missing from clinician training: bias training, culturally responsive care training, training around social determinants of health. And we do this in trainings that we offer every month, but also, and again, another shameless plug, through our Mental Health Equity and Liberation Summit that takes place every July, because July is designated as Minority Mental Health Awareness Month.
Well, we want to thank you for what you're doing and how you're destigmatizing mental health and offering a safe place for Black women and girls, but all people as well. And I want to thank you for doing that in Alabama's 7th Congressional District in Birmingham. And the fact that you're working with the Black Belt Foundation, I can't tell you what a lifeline they've been on a host of issues. And in a state that has not expanded Medicaid, we know that access to quality, affordable health care and mental health care has been exacerbated by a lack of broadband connectivity, which we're working on. I want to thank you for your mentioning of the executive order by President Biden, but do know that we here in Congress, working with him in this administration, have really tried to make closing the health disparity gap and the health equity gap, closing that as a top priority. So I thank you for what you do every day. And again, stay tuned, and we'll make sure that we continue to put across our screen your website as well as your phone number. Thank you, Dr. Richardson.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to hear from our second guest, Tyrinda Hall, who is the Chief of Mental Health at the Central Alabama Veterans Healthcare System. Ms. Hall, thank you so much for joining us and for talking to us about what you do at Central Alabama VA and in the area of mental health. Thank you so much for what you do for our veterans, and tell us a little bit about your work.
Absolutely, and thank you for this opportunity. So, I have had the pleasure of serving with the Central Alabama Veterans Healthcare System for almost 17 years, and I'm just very proud to be a part of the work that's occurring here at Central Alabama, particularly within our mental health area. We are very proud to offer mental health access to services at each of our mental health facilities located in Montgomery and Tuskegee, Alabama, but also within our healthcare clinics that are based in Columbus, Georgia, our Wiregrass area, Dothan, Alabama, and Monroe, Alabama. Our facility offers the ability for a veteran to connect with a mental health professional 365 days a year, because we recognize that access and support and the ability to engage our veterans don't stop after 4:30 on Friday. We are
Absolutely.
absolutely. So we are aware that mental health goes beyond, again, our normal business hours. So we work to ensure that we are offering a mental health professional, whether on call, whether it's holidays or weekends, to have that accessibility for our veterans.
Well, I thank you so much for what you do. You know, our veterans are a special group because they not only have given of themselves and the sacrifices that their family makes to protect and defend our great country, they also come back with special needs. And so during this Mental Health Awareness Month, we wanted to put a special spotlight on the resources and the support available to our veterans. So we thank you for what you're doing. Can you talk to us a little bit about how mental health, you know, how mental health support for our veterans when they're struggling, what that looks like, and how they can be helped not just by their own mental health professional, but by their own families, acknowledging the signs of mental health crisis?
Absolutely. So, one of the items that we want to ensure again is that our veterans not only have access to mental health care, but also that they have access to what we feel is most important, and that's evidence based mental health care. And that's the opportunity for our veterans to not only be given just the ability to engage, but we know that having good quality mental health care reduces the high rate of suicide amongst our veterans. But it also provides just an improved quality of life for our veterans. So, in doing so, our goal is to treat the whole veteran. And what that looks like most times is not only treating the veteran, but also their family members and their caregivers that are engaged, because we recognize that our veterans are oftentimes supported and held up by those that are around them within their support system. It's important.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so one of the items that I will share that was I guess, a fun fact that I learned recently is that by 2028, we are projected to serve over 5 generations of veterans within our VA system. And so that also is just important for us to make sure, again, that we are looking at the veteran as a whole person. We are providing those avenues to build relationships, but that we are also providing those value added life skills for our veterans that may be experiencing mental health challenges.
And I
Many
would
of our
and I would assume that the VA also treats not just the veteran, but as you said, the whole family. And so I would assume that you all have resources that are available to caregivers and family members of veterans as well.
Absolutely. We have a wonderful caregiver support program that provides just a plethora of services to our caregivers, whether it's assessment, support, counseling, but also within our mental health service, we have the ability to provide marital counseling. We provide family counseling. So that includes not only the spouse, but veterans and their children, because again, we recognize that our veterans have a support system inclusive of different family members that hold them up, that support them, that are there throughout their journey day to day. And so we want to again make sure that we are not only supporting our families, but also our veterans and all those that are connected to our veterans.
Well, we want to thank you for all that you do. Are there some numbers or websites that we could put across our screen? They can crawl across our screen that people should know are available for veterans and their families.
Absolutely. And I was very excited to hear you already share the 988 National Suicide Crisis Lifeline, because our Veterans Crisis Center has also partnered. And so we share the same number of dialing 988 and then pressing the number one for our veterans and their family members that may be experiencing crisis. So definitely want to share that information. Also, we provide emergency mental health care 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through our local VA medical centers. And so we will also share our local VA number of 334-727-0550. And they can press extension 7 for crisis, but also they can press extension 5 to be prompted to speak with an on call mental health professional locally if needed.
Thank you. What advice would you give to someone at home who's listening to us, who may be struggling with their own mental health, but is hesitant to seek care? We know that there's a stigma around mental health and mental illness that really I hope to debunk by having not just programs like this, but what you do every day, trying to make sure folks know that mental health is health. Period. Full stop. And we have to be able to take care of our physical health as well as our mental health.
We absolutely do. And one first piece of advice I would say is reach out for support. Community, I think we underestimate the need for support and community building. Start small. Reach out. Many of our veterans, I share with them, they access their primary care providers. Well, little known fact is there's actually a mental health professional embedded within all of our primary care teams here at CAVIS. And that's just so there's an opportunity, because we also recognize that all of our veterans may not be at a point where they're needing ongoing mental health professional help, but they may have moments of crisis or grief or just needing someone to talk to. So I recommend reaching out, making those small connections. Someone mentioned earlier, support looks different for everyone. What I may need as support may not be what the next veteran or family member may need. But the first step is just to reach out, or as I like to say, step out on faith. Stay connected. Attend those mental health events within your communities. Here at the VA, we have celebrated Mental Health Awareness Month and sharing of information the entire month long, but we also are intentional about sharing little tidbits and having events and ways to stay connected throughout the year. So I also encourage our veterans within the campus area to reach out via our social media, where we actually share several events monthly through our public affairs office as a great way of just staying connected to our veterans, but not only for mental health events, but we share homeless event opportunities, caregiver support opportunities. We support each area. So it's a great way, again, to just reach out, to stay connected, and to remember, again, that every person's struggle will not look the same. Everyone's support may not look the same, but at the end, we can celebrate the small win of connecting, reaching out, and building those support systems.
Thanks again, Ms. Hall, for all that you do for our veterans at the Central Alabama Veterans Healthcare System. And again, want to make sure that you all know about the number. 988 is a hotline, 988. It is free, it is confidential, it is available 24/7, 365 days out of the year. And the 988 as the national hotline for suicide prevention, for mental health, and for substance use crisis. And so we really want to make sure that we're promoting the resources that are available to everyone. I want to again thank not just Ms. Hall, but also Dr. Richardson, who came on earlier. Both Ms. Hall and Dr. Richardson provide resources and services to Alabama's 7th Congressional District. And I want to thank you for being a part of the solution and seeking to address a problem that often plagues our community, and folks, just because of the stigma, don't get help. But we want to make sure everyone understands that mental health is health, and we want to make sure that people are treating their holistic body, that's their physical as well as their mental. Thank you again, Ms. Hall, and thank all of you for another edition of Terri Talk.
Thank you.